What's going on, guys? It's the Filthy Casual, back off holiday, and that means I'm back with another Diablo 3 build video. This build deals crazy damage, it's super tough, and it's really easy to play. So let me introduce you to the Season 16 MOE IK4 Slam Barb. Now, this build is capable of GR120 plus. I've seen somebody do a 119 with it on the hardcore Xbox servers. It really does make good use of the RORG buff. Personally, I've cleared a 91 with this, and this is with only 700 Paragon, with one of my legendary gems only at level 24. So in a couple of days, I reckon I'll be clearing 95. Again, this is without augments, and not all of my gear is ancient, so this build is extremely powerful. So let's jump into the gear. We'll start with the set bonuses, and the most important set that we're wearing is the Might of the Earth. We're going to wear 5 pieces, but with the RORG buff, we're going to get the full 6-piece bonuses. So looking at the 2-piece bonus, the cooldown for leap is reduced when we spend 30 fury, and as we're constantly slamming away, this will be reduced quite a lot. This is important for 2 reasons. Leap is our main mobility skill, we'll use it to get around the map, we'll use it to get out of sticky situations if we need, but also it helps considerably with toughness because it will proc our Band of Might, and that will give us an 80% damage reduction when we leap. Also, it helps when we look at the 4-piece bonus because leap gains the effect of the Iron Impact rune, which gives us a massive arm buff, which makes us really tough. So the rune that we'll be picking on leap is Death from Above. Just in case we're going to leap into something, we're going to want to stun it so that it's not going to hit us, unless obviously it's a Juggernaut. Now the 4-piece also makes it so that leap causes an earthquake when we land, but earthquake isn't really getting buffed by anything else. We only get the base effect because it's not on the bar. So we're not really too concerned with the earthquake. So it looks pretty, but don't worry, it's not really going to be doing much damage. Now the 6-piece is where it's at. The main skill that we're looking to buff is Seismic Slam. We get a 20,000% increase on this for the 6-piece bonus. We're going to be juicing this up further, but before we get to that, let's have a look at the other set we're running, which is the Immortal Kings. Now we're going to have 3 pieces of this, and with the RORG buff it's going to be made up to 4, so we're going to get the 2-piece bonus, which says that Call of Ancients last until they die. We're going to take the Together as 1 rune for a 50% damage reduction, which again gives us another big toughness boost. And the 4-piece is actually really handy, because what it does is the Wrath of the Berserker cooldown is reduced as you spend Fury, so as you slam away, the cooldown for this is reduced, and means you've got more uptime on Wrath of the Berserker. And we're taking the Insanity rune for 50% extra damage. We also benefit from increased attack speed, critical hit chance, move speed, and dodge chance. So basically, whilst we've got Wrath of the Berserker up, we are tougher, we deal more damage, and we're quicker. Now, for when it counts, so elites, the Rift Guardian, high density areas, this will be up constantly because you'll spend Fury quickly enough that this will just completely reset. But if there's not much around, you probably won't be able to spend Fury enough to reduce the cooldown for permanent uptime, but it's there when you need it. Now in terms of mixing and matching the gear, for the Might of the Earth set you have to have the shoulders, there are no IK shoulders. For the Immortal King set you have to take the weapon and the belt, because there are no corresponding items in Might of the Earth, but other than that, pick your best pieces. Now that covers the set bonuses, so let's have a look at how we're going to juice up Seismic Slam. So we're going to have Fury the Vanished Peak in the cube, that's going to give us up to 500% multiplicative damage, and also importantly reduce the Fury cost to 50%. We're also going to be wearing the Braces of Destruction, which again is another 500% multiplier on its max roll. For legendary gems we're going to use a Bane of the Trapped, which is going to be a flat percentage damage increase, and we're going to proc this by the Cold rune on Seismic Slam, as that will apply chill to the target and proc your Bane of the Trap at range. And the reason that we're interested in proccing this at range is because we're also going to be taking the Zai's Stone of Vengeance. That again gives you a flat damage multiplier the further away you are, up to 50 yards, which is coincidentally also the same distance that Seismic Slam runs. So anything past 50 yards you're not going to hit, but up to 50 yards you're dealing your max damage. This ties in quite well with the passive we're going to take, which is No Escape, which again gives us a 30% damage increase to Seismic Slam, provided targets are at distance. Now the multipliers don't stop there, we're also going to be taking the Convention of Elements, which is going to give us up to 200% damage increase on the cold rotation. This can be worn or go in the cube, it's a toss up between which one rolls better, that or your Band of Might. We're also going to be taking the Traveller's Pledge and Compass Rose, it's the Endless Walk set. This means that when you stand still you can deal up to an extra 100% damage, and you also get a pretty nice toughness buff as you move around the map with this. We're also going to be taking Ruthless as a passive. That's going to give us a 40% damage increase to enemies below 30% health. Another legendary gem is going to give us a stacking effect, which is the Bane of the Stricken, so the more times you hit something, the more damage you're going to be doing. And then finally, we're also going to be taking Rampage. Whilst this isn't a direct multiplier in a sense, it gives you up to 25% extra strength, which obviously translates into more damage. And the last thing that we're going to have is your follower is going to have an Oculus Ring, and you're going to use your leap to jump into the Oculus Rings for again up to another 80% damage. The amount of multipliers we have is absolutely crazy, and this thing, believe you me, hits like an absolute truck. So let's finish the gear. There's only one more item to cover, that's in the cube, and it is the Fury of the Ancient Shoulders. What this does is to Call of the Ancients, gain the Ancient's Fury rune, and this is how you mainly generate your Fury. So they run in, attack stuff, and every time they hit, you get some Fury. So skills wise, so far we've covered Seismic Slam, Wrath of the Berserker, Leap and Call of the Ancients, and that just leaves 2 slots. Now these are both quite open. I'd say one of them I'm 99% sure that this is the best choice to take, and then the other one we've got quite a lot of freedom. So the one that I'm 99% certain on is we're going to take Warcry Impunity. Now this helps because it'll give us Fury, so it's kind of like a Fury potion. You get a bit of Fury when you pop it. It's also going to give us a 20% armor buff naturally, whilst once you popped it, you're also going to get increased resistances, so that's going to give you good toughness. Now this next slot is totally open. What I've gone with is Overpower Killing Spree to get an 8% critical hit chance boost for 5 seconds. Now critical hits will also reduce the cooldown for Overpower, so this is up quite a lot of the time. You can save it for elites and the Rift Guardian if you want, or you can just keep spamming it, totally up to you. But it is realistically quite open. Now the build revolves around staying at distance, and that really is why I haven't picked Battle Rage Bloodshed. That's normally a Barbarian staple, but the damage dealt is quite close range. Now you can make an argument that it's worthwhile taking just in case you end up in a situation where you've not played particularly well and you're overwhelmed or surrounded by targets. At least you'll be doing quite a bit of damage to those targets that get close, but I think if you're playing the build in an ideal way, you probably won't be using this very much, and that's why I've gone for Overpower. Now you could take Ignore Pain with the Ironhide rune, and what that will do is it will give you 7 seconds of 50% damage reduction. That's kind of like a oh shit panic button, so if you know you're about to take damage, you can press it and have a 50% damage reduction. You could maybe take Threatening Shout Falter to get a 25% damage increase on enemies affected by the shout, but again this has got quite a close range to it, and you're trying to stay at range, so you'd have to get in, shout and then get back out. You could try Sprint with Marathon, or Marathon with Sprint rather, for another move speed buff, or you could go for Furious Charge, again for mobility. You could use Ground Stomp, Wrenching Smash to group up enemies. You could maybe use Revenge to heal yourself if there's enemies around. So there's lots of different choices, you can play around. I've just gone for the increased critical hit damage, but there are plenty of options, so by all means pick whatever you want here. And that's quite rare for Diablo. Normally speaking, any build that you have, you've got to have these skills, they all work together, so it's quite nice to have a bit of freedom to choose here. Now interestingly, the chap who did the 119 on the Xbox servers, he was also using Overpower, but he had Crushing Advance on, which will reduce melee damage and redirect it over a certain number of seconds. Now again, that's a bit of a kind of, oh crap, I've got myself in trouble and I'm taking damage from melee enemies, but again really, if you're playing this properly and you're at range, you shouldn't really need that, so that's why I've swapped out for the critical hit chance rune. Passive wise, I'm on hardcore, so I've got to take Nerves of Steel. You might want to take it anyway, just because obviously the higher up in GRs you go, the harder it is to stay alive. Definitely going to want Ruthless, definitely going to want Rampage, and No Escape. So those 3 passives I think are non-negotiable. And the 4th one, you can swap out Nerves of Steel for something if you wish, but to be honest there's not terribly much else that's exciting. You can make an argument for Brawler, but again that's back onto the I've played the build incorrectly, I've got in trouble and I'm surrounded, but at least I'll be doing extra damage if there's lots of enemies around. But again, as it's a range build, Brawler's not going to help you out too much. In terms of gems, you're going to want to have a life gem in your helm. This build doesn't benefit from cooldown at all, so you may as well have the extra toughness. And then in terms of your chest and your pants, you're going to want rubies. The reason for this is you're going to do extra damage with rubies. With your iron impact, you're also going to get quite a considerable amount of armor off your rubies. Plus you're also using rampage, and when that buff is up, you're going to get 25% bonus on all your strength. So putting strength into your paragon, into your augments, into your gems is really going to be beneficial for that. Now, so before we get to the stats, we'll just talk about the gameplay in general. It's a really tough build, but because you're at range, ideally you're going to avoid a lot of damage. You're going to be looking for maps that put corridors on, where you can just stand there and slam away as enemies walk into it. You're going to use leap to get about. It's also going to give you defensive buffs. You use it to jump in an oculus circle, because that will generally give you a higher buff than your Zystone of Vengeance, but obviously that's going to depend on how much damage you're going to take, what type of enemy it is, and that sort of thing. You're going to spam the crap out of Seismic Slam. That's going to reduce the Wrath of the Berserker cooldown. You'll always have leap, so you've always got Band of Might up. You are super tough, loads of damage, and you'll use Warcry if you run low on Fury. And really, it's only going in between rift levels that you might find that Fury is a problem, or at the very start. But once you Call of the Ancients start hitting things, then that's no problem really. As I say, it's a very easy build to play. You can adapt it slightly if you want to do speed runs. What you do there is you would put the Fury of the Ancients rune onto the Call of the Ancients, and that frees up your armor slot, and then you're going to have Nemesis braces either on your character or on the cube slot, and that way you'll speed up your progression. You probably want to swap out your Stricken for Bane of the Powerful just to do a bit more damage. You could try Wreath of Lightning to see if that makes you move quicker, but really I think the damage from Bane of the Powerful is probably the way to go. Now, in terms of stat priorities, Seismic Slam damage can roll on your helm and your boots, so you want to get that. Then another really important stat is attack speed, because the quicker you can attack, the more you can dump your Fury, and the more time you'll have Wrath of the Berserker up. Now for defensive stats, armor's pretty useful because of the Iron Impact rune, so you essentially get 150% on top of whatever you roll. All resist is always useful for a barb, and vitality life percent. Basically, armor's not something that you should automatically roll off like you would do normally for a barb for this build. But let's look at the pieces specifically. So starting off with the shoulders, you're going to want to have the Spires of the Earth, so strength and then 3 defensive stats. For the gloves, these can be either the Pull of the Earth or the IK gloves. You're going to have strength, attack speed and double crit. Helm, again, that can be either of them, but it's going to be strength, crit chance, seismic slam damage and a socket. Again, chest piece can be either strength and then 2 defensive stats with 3 sockets. Your belt has to be the Immortal King belt. You're going to want strength, you're going to want gain life per fury spent, and then the defensive stat. The life per fury spent is really important because you'll be healing yourself as you whack out your seismic slams, so this is a good way to recover health. For your trousers, you're going to want strength, sockets, and then 2 defensive stats. Your boots, you're going to want seismic slam damage, strength, and then 2 defensive stats. For your Traveler's Pledge, you want a socket, 20% cold damage, crit. For your Braces of Destruction, you want this as close to 500% as possible. You want strength, crit hit chance, and then 2 defensive stats. For your Compass Rose, you want a socket, crit, attack speed, and strength. For your Convention of Elements, you want roll as close to 200% as possible, attack speed, socket, crit. Now if you go Band of Might, exact same rolls, you just want as close to 80% for the damage reduction as possible. For your Immortal King's Boulder Breaker, you want percent increased damage, strength, attack speed. You also want to try and get maximum fury as high as you can on this, because again, it'll just help you for fury problems at the very start of any rift. Now, defensive stats can be juggled about, and the ones in the D3 plan are just for illustrative purposes. I'm not entirely sure which particular stat is best, but you know, by all means you can play around with it. So that about wraps up the build guide. I hope you liked it. If you found it useful, if you could drop me a like, leave me a comment, that'd be great. Subscribe if you want to see some more videos. Aiming to get 2 to 3 videos out a week again now I'm back off holiday. Good luck, hope you enjoyed the build, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.